practical issues. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so my case is about the topics of the emotional and mental health needs of children who are excluded from school. And this is a topic that the informants are very sensitive group. So we have many things that we have to concern before going to collect data. So the case studies, in this case, this research seeks to understand the emotional and mental health needs of children who are excluded from school. The project will involve interviews and focus group with children aged 12 to 16 to take place at various locations and venues. So there are two things that I think is indicate that our subjects are very sensitive. The first one is their age. Even 12 to 16, they are kind of like teenager, but they still are children. They still being children. So we have to, because of the sensitive group, so we have to think too much with the topics that we will interview them, we will ask them in the focus group. And the second point is their status, because every children, normally they have to go to school, but for children who are excluded from schools, there are so kinds like many reasons. For example, the financials of their families or their personal health problems, kind of like that. So so it is the point. And the last one is about the topics that we want to research is about the emotional and mental health. So this is very, very sensitive topics if we want to talk with them, kind of like that. So in this case study is obviously it's very sensitive groups. So the practical issues that are involved in these studies, I will start with the preparation before collecting data. Normally, we have to submit documents for declaration to the research ethics review committee or the institution review committee in order to prove that, okay, we will do this project in appropriate way, that we will not bring any harmful to our subjects. And then we have to contact with community leader, social worker, or teacher who they can connect with parents and children. Because children aged 12 to 16, we have to contact with their parents for the permission, some kind like that. But it's very hard to access to children who are excluded from school for many reasons, for the information that we will have to use in order to contact them. So in my opinion, we have to contact with like people who can help us to meet them, kind of like that. And then we have to invite them to be informants or participants in our study by give them information. For example, like the aim of the studies, the process of collecting data, and the value of the studies. And after maybe we have the name or the contact or kind of like that, we may call them, we may meet them, or we will let the people, for example, social worker or teacher, to select the name list for us. After that, we have to select children who meet the inclusion criteria. And then we have to send consent form to their parents, because their age is still be like children's. And after that, we have to prepare the venue, the relaxing venue for the interview in focus group session, and prepare the incentives, for example, like travel expense, and prepare the question that will not will not let them feel in a negative way. So normally we have to prepare the question for interview and for focus group is the kind of like the important part in interviews and focus group. But the thing that we have to concern is about the tone of the question that will let the children feel bad or feel in a negative way because of their status. They are excluded from school. So we have to be careful in this part. And then we have to think about the recording tools. And in my opinion, I think it's for sure we have to provide with at least 2 devices to record during the interviews and focus group. And in my opinion, I think we have to bring someone who are health expert in mental health or emotional problem into our data collection process, which is the interview and the focus group. So my suggestion is we have to contact to psychologists or psychiatrists to help watching or observing the situation in the interview and the focus group session. And during data collection process, we have to talk with our teams, kind of like the research assistants, psychologists, and many and other people. And then we have to welcome parents and children into our interviews and bring parents to another place, which we prepare activities, foods, and drinks for them, and explain children about what they have to do in the interviews and focus group, and ask them a permission for recording during the interview and focus group session. During the interview and the focus group, we have to encourage children to participate. And the important point is we have to observe children's emotion during the interview and focus group, just in case of preventing them from negative feelings. If we feel that someone feels kind of like they feel like not okay, kind of like that, the psychologist or the psychiatrist should charge them and help them, maybe bring them outside the interview rooms or kind of like that, because they are children. So we have to think too much. Sometimes they cannot express their feelings, but we have to help them as a researchers in these topics. And after we finish the interview, we have to say thank you to their parents and children for their coming to join our research and give the souvenir or incentive to them. I will give the information and explain about the incentives in the later. Okay, and in data storing process, it's very important. I will prepare qualitative analysis program to data analysis process and store data in my own computer and private cloud, and I will add password to protect confidential data. And I will use the pseudonym when present result. For the ethical issues that are involved, it's very important to submit documents to the research committee and work closely with community leaders, psychologists, social worker, or teacher before contact to their family, and prepare the private place for interview and consent form for their children. And I will bring one of them, maybe social worker, psychologist, or to the interview in order to protect their feeling. And I've explained clearly and simply about the aim of the study, the benefits of the studies. And the very important point for me is to protect their feeling, children's feeling, by avoiding the negative question that may lead them feel bad. And after interview and focus group, I will give them information about coping strategy for themselves. Is the benefit of the study. We will not just ask them for information, but we will give them the suggestion or instruction or the useful information about coping strategy from emotional problem or health problem. The difficulty that could or be countered by the researcher is kind of like access their parents to send consent form. We have to access them to, because parents will allow students to, allow children to come to our research. So we have to access them. It may difficult for many reasons, depends on the reason of excluded the student from school. In case of low-income family, researchers should provide the travel expenses for them. We can assume that people with low-income family will exclude their student from the school. So we have to prepare like travel expense or incentive to them, and we have to separate them from their family to let them relax independent and let them feel free to express their feeling without judgment, because we will talk about the emotional problem, talk about the like mental health problem or mental health needs, kind of like that. So we will have to let them feel free to express their feeling. And the last section is about the action that the researcher can take to overcome, avoid, or reduce the difficulties. The first thing, I think we have to work closely again with community leaders, social worker, and teacher to let them help us explain the process of interview and focus group to children. And seeking for research funding opportunities to prepare budgets for research projects, for example, for travel expenses, for incentive, for souvenir for children, for venue rental and food and drinks, and hiring psychologists to our study or research assistant, and prepare relaxed places and private places and activities, kind of like television, kind of like crafting, for parents during the waiting for their children, food and drinks for children and their family. And prepare the second plan if informant leave the interview and focus group session, because we have to tell students that in a simple way that, okay, what we will do with them, and they can leave the study every time they want without judgment, without punishment. So we have to kind of like prepare the second plan if informant leave, and we have to seek more and did it again, and clear our head and mind before study interview and focus group session, and let research assistant help checking the recording and the document during interview and focus group. And the important thing is be yourself and don't pressure yourself too much. And that's all for me for the highlight the practical issues and the ethical issue in the research project about emotional and mental health for children.
Okay, thank you ครับปุกปิก Vince and Vincent, do you have any questions to the topic and the contents that Pukpik presented us about? Yeah, special group of interviewees.
I have one.
Okay.
Yes, welcome.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. People pick. In the interview, you said that I assume that the parents will be there, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So, during the process of data collection, such as the FGD, is it a must that the parents must be there, because it might affect the way the children will answer, because they know that they are being observed. So, some children are do not disclose some information to their parents,
Yeah.
and they disclose to other people.
Yes. I just kind of like just in case the parent coming with us, I will kind of like bring parent to another place that we will prepare for them, kind of like with like food and drink and the activities like television and like kind of newspaper, and we will bring students to the interview rooms to let them be independent and feel
Yeah.
free to express kind of like that. But just in case, because of the age of the children 12 to 16, for maybe for 16 person, they will come to our interview alone, so kind of like that. So
Oh.
I just think about children under 15, they come with their parents, kind of like that. We have to prepare like the rooms or the space or the area for their parents.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I thought that the parents is beside the children.
Yeah, yes,
when-
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
during
Have
the
to think
interview,
about
but it's not.
parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Oh,
Okay, Vincent, do you have any
um,
question?
yeah. Just curiosity also, because Pukpik mentioned here that you will be doing two methods: the interview and focus group. Uh, how will you determine those participants who will take place in an solo interview or a focus group discussion?
Mm-hmm. I think in this case studies, I think it depends on the research design. So kind of like maybe we have to, it depends, I think, because this is my kind of like my case study that I received from this term paper. So I didn't design for, I didn't design for the like kind of like the orientation of the research methods, kind of like should I start from the interview or and then later focus groups, or should I start from focus group and then the interview? So but in my opinion, I think it depends on the research question again, and the research design. For example, like if we can start with a focus group and then we have kind of like the result, and then we want to seek more topics in some topic from some children, we can interview them. Maybe next time, because it's too much if we like highlight focus groups and then we interview them. So maybe we can highlight make an appointment with the children that we want to get more information next time in next venues, and kind of like that.
Thank you, Pukpik.
ปุ๊กปิ๊กครับ let me get you give you some feedback about your answers to the questions. I think there are two things that you have to concern. I mean, if for this issue, I think for the first one, because sometimes the children who are excluded from school, sometimes sorry, I have to use these words. They are orphans. They have no parents at all. Maybe just like homeless kids or homeless children. Also sometimes you will become, as a researcher, you will become a stranger for them. So I think but your answer is okay. You need help from psychiatrists or any kind of social worker. Yeah, very well done. Yeah, it's very good. But maybe you can use these kinds of professionals as a gatekeeper that bring you to the interviewee, right? Especially for the homeless, or they stay alone. They didn't have any parents at all. That is very difficult, right? It is very difficult for them. And if you, yeah, as you can say, yeah, you need help from social workers, and you bring them to, to invite you or lead you to the interview, that they be okay, right? You are not, you become a social worker's friend. So yeah, you are not stranger at all. And I would say maybe yeah, in the question, yeah, that take place at various locations and venues. So I think for travel expenses, sometimes not important because you have to bring yourself to the locations or the maybe I would say safe zones or comfort zones for children, especially for for homeless or they have no like some kind of offense or any kind of thing else. But I will impress to your answer, especially when you think about interview questions or focus group questions. It's very good. Maybe some question that you want to delve into some kind of emotional or mental health. Sometimes it's hurt their feeling as well, right? That you just need some kind we just, I mean not say we just need straight frank or frankly answers, right? That we forget about their feelings. That your answers impressed me a lot at this point. But anyway, to conclude, my feedback, you have to concern about various groups of children, especially orphans and homeless children, right? And another thing is places, like places you interview them, maybe social workers office, or even on the street that you visit them. But but I will say you have to concern, or you have to change yourself from a researcher to become a social worker's friend. So that is quite easy to contact them directly. But overall your answer is very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, because how to say, we didn't know exactly what the reason why these children are excluded from the school. So it could be so many things, right? And also, we, as Ajahn Somsak said, we didn't know who are they very well. I mean, the children. Probably they are orphan, or probably they also stay with their families. So once who you will send the consent form or ask for the consent, so it could be their parents or guardians, right? And doing interviews or focus group, I think you should take it into, I mean, you should consider as well, because if you do the private or one-to-one interview, I think it's easier for us as a researcher to do, right, to deal with it. But if you do the focus group, I mean, groups of many children, so you need more, how to say, skills, or you need more, how to say, activities. I mean, you have to deal with it, okay? And asking help from the social worker or psychiatrist, right? I think that is a good way to be considered. But I'm not sure about the role and responsibility. I mean, the roles and responsibility that involved in your research, because I think in the last slides you said that you will ask them something, right? Ask them
maybe this one, right?
Yes. So I think another slide.
Oh, okay. So you mean this one? No. Okay.
Work
No.
closely.
Okay.
Let them help us explain the process of interview and focus group to children and their families. So in some case that, I mean, in some case that the children, they are not orphans, they are not live in social in the that place, but they are from family, they live with families. But how not sure who will explain the process of the interview and focus group. Yeah, so maybe you can contact them, ask them for help to recruit to recruit the children, right? But the researcher will tell or explain the process to them, to the gatekeeper or the social workers or teachers. Okay, and another point is about the incentives and souvenir. When you send the documents to the ethics committee, you need to identify, tell them the specific one. You mean the money or how much, or you mean the gift, how much, what is the gift? A bag or stationaries or something like that. So you need to specify. Yes. About the venues, yes, it's good for us to aware about the safety, about the comfort of the place that you will interview them. But also, I need you to think about yourself as well. Whether that place is is secure or not. For your safety, because we don't know. Yes, as the question didn't state exact what the place is. Yeah, it could be on the street or on the how to say, slum what yeah, or in the house or something like that. So that is very need to be concerned as well. Okay, thank you very much.
ขอบคุณค่ะอาจารย์
So it's time for you to fill the form, the Google form for public.
อาจารย์คะ do I have to assess myself in the form or
Yes,
no?
please.
Okay.
To proceed the next step. But you have to rate yourself 0.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Waiting for wins.
So the next
Wins.
topic.
Okay. Oh, it's my, oh my God.
Yeah, your turn now.
Okay, yeah, sige, allow me to share my screen and then. Okay, can you see my screen, John?
I can see it.
Okay,
Thank you.
I will discuss it. Oh my God, here's my social
Now
support.
your supporter barking can cheer you up again.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
I will just go through this as soon as quick as possible to So good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon I'm going to present my term paper in this subject, the qualitative research method. So my case is this: the research will invite college students aged 16 to 18 to be co-researchers on a project about students and their attitudes towards underage drinking. It will explore the influences of underage alcohol and on social and family relationships. So to give you a context, you're conducting research is a challenging undertaking, and along the whole process of doing the academic endeavor, the researcher and the research itself will face some difficulties that is inevitable since the research is an activity where the researcher must face diverse issues simultaneously. So these challenges often include practical and ethical issues where we deal with them as the problem in the research arises. Sorry about that. Excuse me. To continue, thus,
Okay.
careful thought and consideration and practical and ethical considerations are necessary to carry out the research correctly and successfully. So to give you the context, in connection with the case study, let us establish that the scenario is in the Philippine setting in context. So in the Philippines, several legal ages depend on the specific law or endeavor as a person is currently transacting. So 18 years old is the legal age to enter the contract or to be considered as the age of majority according to RA 6809. To marry according to the Executive Order 209 series of 1987, and to vote according to the Philippine Constitution Article 5. 17 years old is the legal age to drive according to RA 4136, and the current legal age for sexual content is 12 years old. However, it will soon change into 16 years old when the Senate Bill 2332 will be implemented. For the drinking age, a House Bill 3706 or the Anti-Underage Drinking Act was submitted and introduced in 2019. The said bill specified that minors shall refer to those who are below 18 years old. Since this bill is not yet passed into law, we will stick with the provisions of the RA 6809 as it mandates the lowering of the legal age from 21 to 18 years old. So for the research ethics in the Philippines, the Philippine National Health Research System or PNHRS governs the research ethics in almost all organizations and institutions that engage in research. This is through the collaboration of different government institutions, including the Department of Science and Technology, Department of Health, Commission on Higher Education, and the University of the Philippines, Manila, through the enactment of RA 10532 or the Philippine National Health Research System Act of 2013. So specifically, to elaborate and specify the provisions that refers to the research ethics in Section 12 of the said RA, the DOST issued Special Order number 091, series of 2016, to create the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board or the FREB with the aim to ensure the adherence to the universal principle for the protection of human participants in research. In 2018, the PREB published the 2017 edition of the National Ethical Guidelines for Health and Health-Related Research, or the NEGHHR 2017. So in the book, research involving human participants include research in social science, among other disciplines. So 7 elements of research ethics have been included there, which include social value, informed consent, vulnerability of research participants, risk, benefits, and safety, privacy and confidentiality of information, justice, and transparency. Okay, so aside from the methodological and theoretical aspects that need to be considered in doing research, the practical issues that will be involved need to be considered for the study to push through. In connection with the case study, below are the practical issues involved in conducting the research, together with the difficulties that might be encountered and the solutions that they can do as a researcher. First, venue. The difficulties you can encounter here is that the venue might be inaccessible to the research participants in terms of distance, access, etc. So the solution of the researcher might be, the researcher can either one, select a venue that is accessible in terms of distance to all participants, and two, the researcher can be the one to visit the research participants provided prior permission was approved and consent was provided. If a specific venue is chosen, the researcher must ensure that the access to the venue is suited to the specific needs of the research participant if there is such. For example, they are PWD friendly. There are ramps, there are elevators for the handicapped or those who are in wheelchair. Second, the data collection method. So the difficulties there is that the data collection method will be, in the case study, it will use a semi-structured interview. So the difficulty is that the research participant cannot clearly understand the question. So the solution might be the researcher will explain and the whole research process will clearly and translate the questions in a language and manner that suit the individual's capacity and level of understanding, such as their native tongue. In the Philippines, if you are going to do a research or interview, you need to translate it to the mother tongue. Since in the Philippines there are a lot of local languages, they need to be translated by the researcher. Next is the recording and storing of data. So the difficulty, technical issues might be encountered, such as device malfunction, low battery of the recorder, etc. The researcher can do as a solution. The researcher must be prepared for backup devices to ensure that there is a duplicate file or recording. In the recording process, it is advised that two devices will be utilized simultaneously. In storing the data, the researcher must also create multiple copies according to her needs. Preferably, one copy should be stored in the cloud. Please note that the storage and recording of data should strictly observe protect the data from breach or unauthorized access. Thus, security measures must be observed, such as putting passcodes, which are strongly recommended. Next, money or financial. The researcher might encounter a financial constraint in terms of funding. So the researcher can apply for research funding or grant from the university or academic institution where they are affiliated as a solution. In some cases that the researcher will do an independent research, the researcher can look for sponsors or partners so that some of the financial burdens of the process of doing that research will be carried out. Um, Still in the money and financial, so the research participant might have no money in traveling, going to the interview venue. So the solution might be the researcher can be the one who will go to the place of the research participant. If the research participant has traveled to the venue, the researcher shall reimburse the expense incurred when taking part in the study. But take note, the amount of the amount of the financial or the reimbursement should not be too big for it to be a reason for some research participant to just participate for the sake of the monetary gain. It must not be the case. So the researcher must be very careful with this aspect. Skills. The difficulty that the researcher can encounter is that um, the researcher might have difficulties administering the interview because they are not well versed in the data collection method. So the researcher, as a solution, can administer a pilot testing to test the questions in the interview and the flow of the interview process and to practice their skills in asking questions and asking follow-up questions. So, practice makes perfect. So, pilot testing is really important. So, in the skills, the research participants might have difficulties in expressing their thoughts and opinion because of low communication skills. So the researcher should elucidate the questions. They have to clarify the questions if needed. And if needed, the researcher can rephrase the question provided that one, it will be not a leading question, and two, the context of the original question will retain. So in the ethical aspect, you know, okay, So research ethics, especially in social science, often collects data from people about people, and all social research involved ethical issues. So ethics came into frontline after World War II, after the discoveries of the inhumane and brutal experiments conducted by the Nazi doctors and the Jewish prisoners in the concentration camps. Hence, ethics became a ever-present concern for all researchers. Along the process of conceptualization and writing the researcher also needs to anticipate the possible ethical issues that may surface during the duration of the conducting of the study. These ethical issues include risk of harm, autonomy, and informed consent, privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity, and researching vulnerable groups. Considering the scenario given in the case study, the following are the ethical issues that the author might encounter in the process, and and it is also based in parallel with the elements listed by the PREB, or the Philippine Health Research Ethics Board. So number one, social value. The difficulties that the researcher might encounter is that the researcher have difficulties justifying the study's relevance, especially on the existing social health and social or health problems. So solution is that the research can consult scientific data conducted by reliable sources, such as government agencies or etc. Additionally, the researcher can refer to laws, bills, and other legislature that have been and will be passed to establish strong support backed up by legislatures and scientific data. For informed consent, the one of the difficulties is that the research participants are students aged from 11 to 16 years old, thus considered as minors. Hence, they are not yet at a legal age to sign the informed consent by themselves. So according to the guidelines, parent or legally authorized representative or LAR of the each child shall provide the necessary consent for the participating minor. Aside from the informed consent from the LARs, an assent form must be secured from the child without any coercion. So aside from the consent from the parent, you as the researcher should secure an assent form. Assent is the manifestation of the agreement of a minor to participate in a research or clinical trial. The assent may be in oral or written form. So when your research participant is minor, you need to secure two consent: assent form and the authorized consent or informed consent from the legal guardian. Next, the minor has no parent available due to some circumstances. So in place of the parents or legal guardians, the authority to give the consent must be as follows. First, grandparents, older siblings over 21 years old, unless unfit or unqualified, or the actual custodian over 21 years old. So these are the levels, or um, the tier of those who can give the um, consent in lieu with the parents. So next is the researcher is not sure of the actual age of the respondent. So the researcher can determine the child's age through the documentary evidences such as birth certificate, baptismal certificate, any other documents that support the claim, or in absence of the record, the competent testimonials will do. Okay, so next, the vulnerability of research participants. So some of the research participants may have difficulties answering the questions due to some circumstances brought by their respondents' situation, such as lack of education due to poverty or etc. So the researcher, as a solution, can explain the whole research process and the question be translated into the language where the research participant is comfortable. Oh my God. So for the risk and benefits and safety, the research participant have a risk of being stereotyped due to the sensitive topic about underage drinking. So that is one of the risks in answering those questions, because society is judgmental. So oftentimes those people who are marginalized are being also stereotyped. So the researcher must ensure that the interview will be a safe and open space where the research participant can divulge opinions without the fear of being stereotyped or judged. Furthermore, the researcher can assure the research participant that the information given during the process will be treated with utmost confidentiality and respect. Lastly, the researcher can explain to the research participant that they have the autonomy to withdraw at any period of the research process when they feel uncomfortable. So that is very important to let the research participants to let them know that they can withdraw anytime of the research process specifically in the data collection phase. So next is the result of the study might be unavailable to some research participants. So this is in connection with the benefit. So the researcher must endeavor to ensure that reasonable availability and accessibility of favorable research outcome to the community is being practiced or will be tried to implement. The next is for the safety. The research participants, sorry. So the research participants are not comfortable with the venue in terms of safety. So what can the researcher do is that the researcher can check the venue ahead to make sure it's safety and ergonomic. In the event that an unsafe circumstance surfaced during the interview, the researcher must prioritize the safety of the research participant and look for some safe alternative venue, or in some cases, you can reschedule the venue. So for the privacy and confidentiality of information, so the researcher expressed concern about when the interview will be transcribed and coded. So a research participant. So the researcher can show and discuss with the research participants the data protection plan protocol, especially in the data collection and analysis, which also includes the steps to be taken so that all who have access to the data and the identities of the respondents can safeguard privacy and confidentiality. So also the researcher needs to clarify the steps of the whole research process, which includes the privacy and the confidentiality in terms of how the researcher will take care of the collected data. So next, so during the duration of the interview, the researcher discovered that the research participant poses a harmful behavior, not only to others but to himself. So in the event that the researcher will discover or observe this occurrence of illegal or harmful behaviors, the researcher shall do the following. First, explicitly indicate the limits of confidentiality in the informed consent process. So during the informed consent process, the researcher needs to disclose also the limitation of the confidentiality clause. So such as when the researcher is ethically and legally obliged to disclose the identity of the respondents to forestall imminent harm to self or others. Or the researcher can emphasize the right of the respondent to withdraw from any study or withdraw his or her data and to refuse to answer any question for the safety of both parties, and prepare a concrete and realistic protocol for reporting rather and referral in the event that imminent harm or criminal act is disclosed or discovered in the process of data collection. So next is justice. This is second to the last. Some of the research participants are also members of other societal minorities such as the LGBTQ plus community. So in the research involving human participants, the principle of justice refers to primarily to distribute justice, which requires the equitable distribution of both the burdens and the benefits of participation in research. So the researcher must ensure that the burden is balanced, the distribution of burden is balanced. So in this case, the researcher must treat all participants with equity, regardless of economic status, gender, race, or creed. Thus, the equal care must be given to all participants without discrimination. So next is the research participant incurred financial resources to travel to participate in the research. So like what I've discussed earlier, the researcher can reimburse. However, it must be strictly observed that the payments shall not be too large to induce a participant to participate for the sake of monetary gain. Lastly, for the transparency, the details of the research are not precise with the research participant. He expresses concern and questions leading to the hesitation of giving informed consent. So there are times that when however the researcher reiterates or discuss the research process, it seems that it is still vague with the research participant. So all the researcher could do is to um, discuss it again or make it simpler to so that the research participant can understand more clearly. So in the process of transparency, the aspects of the study that may impact the rights, health, and safety of the participants should be um, disclosed with the research participant. Should the research participant or the LAR decided not to participate, the researcher must respect the decision. Okay, so let me end my presentation with this reminder. So research is a detailed process that aims to contribute or develop knowledge that can be added to the general body of knowledge. So along the steps of and the process, the researcher will inevitably meet some challenges, either in practical or ethical aspects, while still ensuring the participants' dignity, privacy, and safety. As a qualified researcher, you need to think of ways to navigate through the situation without sacrificing the ethical obligations you swore to uphold while still prioritizing the care and protection of your research participants. So Oliver in 2010 concurs with this as he stated that the needs of the people are more important than the needs of the researcher and the research itself. So that's all for my presentation. This is my references and kapong kap or maraming salamat po. Okay. So if you have questions, I will try my best to answer it for you. Okay. Stop share. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions from Vincent or Pete? Yes, please.
Okay. So it's maybe it's kind of question, but I interest in the about the topics of translations or kind of like you say that for the informant or the participant that they have kind of like you have to translate the question into their mother tongue language,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So could you please explain about these topics in the Philippines? I'm not highlight. Yeah.
Okay. There are instances which when you go to the field, they don't care what they were they don't care what they're going to sign. They will just sign. For example, they don't I mean they don't have much care about the privacy, etc. like that. They just sign. When you ask them to sign, they sign like that. And therefore, some of your participants. Sorry?
Pardon? No. They just signed, but do you still have to inform them?
Yes, Ajan. But I mean, in the sense that you cannot just let them, you cannot just give a paper and you just instruct, oh, please read and sign. No, it's not that. It's not the process here. You need to give the paper, and along with the process, you're going to run through all the content of the consent together with the participant because sometimes they cannot understand some of the words. Yeah. So oftentimes when you don't go through with them, they'll just sign without even realizing the risks, benefits, etc. So in the context of research question, that's also the case. Some of them that did have difficulties in contextualizing the real essence of the question. They can understand the question, but they don't know the what it really meant. I mean, like that, because sometimes context is plays a big role in the meaning of the question, and the answer depends on the question. You know what I mean? So most of the researchers, especially in social science here, social workers, etc., when they go to the field, they translate it as if they are conversing the questions. But the research participant is aware that it is a survey question, but the way the researcher is conversing with the participant is just like a casual conversation. But the questions the researcher is asking is in line with the survey question. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So how many language, I mean local language in your hometown?
In my hometown, we only have one language, but 5 dialect. I mean, language is somehow that's the argue. It is still debatable here in the Philippines, but the difference between language and dialect is that language, when I spoke to you, you cannot understand. It's something like that. So the local language here, it is considered language here because Manila people, such as Vincent, cannot understand my language. But dialect is that it is the other variant of the language. So maybe you use some words different from others, but you still understand each other. That's dialect.
So
Okay.
that means if you have to plan the research design, in your case, kind of like the children with alcohol and kind of like that. So you have to prepare, kind of like many version of the question or many version of the consent form or not. If you say that you have many diet or kind of like, yeah.
Okay. In all in most cases, you only prepare two, English and the local language, and oftentimes it's the national language, Tagalog. Because although we have local languages, we can understand the national language, which is Tagalog. So oftentimes it is English and Tagalog. But when it is case to case basis, because let's say the research ethics board requires it, then you do the Hiligaynon. So you already have 3. So but most of the time it's only 2, the Tagalog and the English one.
Thank you. Interesting.
Thank you. It's okay.
Vincent?
For me, just out of curiosity, with regards to the aspect of getting information, um, exploring the influences of on social and family relationships, will the since the age bracket is 16 to 18 and 18 is the for 16 to 17, how will the consent of the family, the parents or guardians will affect the number of data that can be gathered from your participant, the number of participants that can be on board for this research.
Oh, okay. First, let me clarify. The age 16 to 18 will be a co-researcher. So it will not be a participant. But in your case, we can, those 17 and below needs to secure informed consent from the guardian and assent form. But for those who are 18 already, they can sign by themselves. Yeah, yeah. They don't need any more assent form or from guardian. No, but those, because we stick with the legal mandate, which is the 18 years old below. 18 is the majority age, so we will stick with that. Yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah, and
18.
I would just like to add information. In reality, is Diva Vince, in this with this kind of research, normally students will just forge their parents' consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reality here. That's I thought of that because in most cases, like when we were college days, so many will ask you to fill out something for their study or research, and sometimes it is along with a consent form. Then right then and there, everything will be signed, and then you can now take the consent, the survey for the researcher.
But we have already experienced that, but in the
Yeah.
not in the research aspect.
Mm.
It's something like subscription to the yearbook. So it in my case, students often in back in my 2017, there are some students who will graduate, who will graduate college who are not yet 18. So basically, their consent must be signed by their parents, and then in subscribing, it will entail you to pay something like that. And then at the end of the school year, the parents barge in our office, and then, oh my God, I was not informed that I have to pay something like this. I don't have any idea about this. So um, the burden of proof or the burden will go to the child,
Yeah.
because we as I mean and also as a content as a whole, we as the researcher, we assume that the signature there is of the parents, because it's sometimes it's impossible to check one by one, especially if you have a lot of respondents. So you assume in good faith that the signature that you have received is of the parents. So the burden is going to be on the child, I mean on the parents themselves, because they, what happened, why do your child doesn't communicate with you, something like that. So it's still kind of tricky, and you can only solve that when it's already there, but you can mitigate the effects on both parties.
Handle it
Yeah,
case to case.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. My turn now. I think I love the way you present. I think you try to show us about the legal context in the Philippines, and together with I mean the Philippines ethical research something, and yeah, you make a point and you try to suggest any kinds of solutions, right, by relying on the legal context that you showed. And yeah, I can feel your effort. It's a very good attempt, but I will say I, I can't criticize you anymore, but I would say sometimes you mentioned the very important issues about the actual age of you know teenage drinker. I would say the topic that we assign us is it's about uh, lawbreakers, right? We break the law because
Mm.
the teenager below 18 years old sometimes is against the law. That you give us the legal context. So uh, I suppose if you do the real research, it's very hard. I would say very hard to approach or recruit the interviewees who have break the law. They break the law and they have a uh, alcohol drinkers. I think it's very hard for me and a little bit, I would say soft crime, right? It's
Yeah.
a little bit soft crime, but even, yeah, and you mentioned about actual age. It's very important. So if you want to make sure that they are, below 18 years old, so you ask them, just joking, you ask them to show their ID card, identity
Ye-
card. Now
Yeah.
you can break the research ethics now, because yeah, you ask them to not anonymous at all. So you want to make sure, right? If you are a strict researcher and you want to make sure that you get actual age sample, right? And you try your best, but you against the ethical issues again, right? It's very hard if you say that, because it's a soft crime. Or if you ask for a list of students, right, or college students from the school or colleges, sometimes that is against their reputation. As you know, this college, they have many students have alcoholic problems. I think again, it's quite sensitive, and your assignment is very hard. I agree that, and again, or I would say, if I were you, sometimes I just, I mean, in real life, I just try to, contact the doctors in a rehab clinic, and maybe after they got a treatment like an alcoholic. But I will say I accept that it's quite a little bit biased, because you choose some, some people who got alcoholic problems in their health. But you can contact the doctor in a rehab clinic and ask interviewees to think about or recall their drinking behaviors in the past, maybe 1 year ago or 2 years ago, and to make it sure and to make it safe about, as you said, if they become, adults, they can show up themselves, or it's quite
Yeah.
easy to have an identification, personal identification. But for me, if I will use, I think I will visit a rehab clinic and ask them to think about the past, maybe very very unhappy past, and talking about maybe 1 year or 2 years ago they got some problem. But my solution have a problem as well, because maybe it's the past, not the present, right? But at
Yeah.
least I try to solve the problem that alcohol teenage drinkers sometimes is, lawbreakers, and it's quite a soft
Yeah.
crime. No one
Yeah.
want to show up, right? Even we have we have some kind of smoke cigarette when we are student, but you didn't let your parents know, right? It's not good. But if you ask me at the present, maybe I can tell my, and it's not good, the story, but I want to share now, because and I become adult, right? So
Yeah.
that's my solution for you for this case.
Yeah. I've also thought about that, contacting rehab something, but I think when I will go to that institution, that will um born some additional ethical issues and practical issues as well, because therapists oath
Yeah.
for secrecy, something like that. So it might be difficult for me to enter, because therapy sessions, etc., something like that, identity of those who went to them for alcohol therapy. So yeah, it's very, but I think it's very feasible and helpful, especially in those alcoholic drinkers, because they oftentimes they are already adult. Yeah. Unlike the case of people picked earlier, that she will going to bring social workers here. A lot of street children view in the Philippines, a lot of street children who are also out of school youth view social workers as prison officers. Yeah. So I thought that, in the Philippines you cannot just bring them, because they view rehabilitation centers as prisons. So
Yeah.
when they see social workers, they will run away to you immediately. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I hope that's not the case in Thailand. You know.
Oh yeah, it's quite different,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Crap.
Luckily.
May I ask some? May I have some? I have some comment for Vince.
Oh.
I love the way that you form your presentation. I mean, from the, I mean, you question yourself and also you provide the solution or answer as well. You think a lot about the various scenario that could be happened during the project, and you how to say, you study a lot about the rules and regulations. I mean, the relevant rules and regulations about the topic. I mean, the underage drinking and drinker. But I'm not sure whether you mentioned about I mean, the question for, I mean, the case for you is you are invite college students to be your co-researchers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
not sure that if you is all right.
Oh,
Because
I
for I think the roles of college, the roles of co-researcher may be different from research participants. So how do you deal with college students that they are your co-researcher?
okay. According to the guideline, I forgot to include that in my slide. But I also thought about that because
Ah.
you know when in the case the co-researcher are some of them is some of them are minors. So in the national ethical guidelines, there are qualifications stated there. It's qualification of researcher. So in that guideline, it only stated three qualifications. So number one, the person engaged in research involving human participant shall have a moral fortitude, scientific confidence, social awareness, cultural sensitivity, intellectual humility, vigilance, and preparedness for safety issues. Second, the researcher shall have the training, ability, and resources to conduct the proposed study. And third, the researcher shall be knowledgeable of the literature on the research topic. So basing on the qualifications here, I think it is not that not that tricky in terms of qualifying someone in order for them to be called researcher, because here in the Philippines, even high school students do researches, and they are aging from 14 to 16, and oftentimes they do experimental, etc. But for me in my case, if this will be me the researcher and I will invite some co-researchers, I will secure a parent's permit, or consent still from the guardian of those underage, um, in the sense that we cannot predict what will happen along the way of the research process. So there may be some incidents or some harmful something, and I need also to protect my institution and myself from, it's not washing my hands from the responsibility, but it's more of mutual understanding that we are going through this research process, with you agreeing to the risks and possibilities also of being a co-researcher. Yeah.
Okay,
So yeah,
that's
consent.
glad. Yeah, that's glad. Thinking about his or her safety.
Yes, yes.
And how's about the training? Do you think about the training? I mean, because they will work as a co-researcher, They should know your research project. They should know about how to collect the data and secure the data,
Mm-mm.
right?
Since in the case they are already college students, maybe they have some ideas already on conducting some research, etc. But in this case, before we deploy or before we're going to the field, we must have prior meetings
Mm-hmm.
to discuss some vital issues, like for example, when we're going to do the interview, who's going to be our research participants, what
Mhm.
are the process we're going to take, and especially it's important also to know the delegation and their
Mhm.
tasks during the research process. Yes, so prior
And
meeting is very important.
yeah, the training, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
training or packet of information, right? Data collection and even the questions, interview guide, and also the how to use any device to record
Mm,
the interview.
yes.
If they have to observe, so you need to train them.
Mm,
And,
yes, Cap.
if I were the IRB committee, can I ask, do you think about, I mean, they might ask how, I mean, the relationship between you and co-researcher will affect any, how to say, any like, will cause some bias or not?
Mm,
For example, you are teacher, but you invite your student to be co-researcher and they do very well. So you may grade him or her high score. And if they, I mean, they are not responsible for the project and they do, yeah, very bad, so you feel angry. And does this affect the student evaluation, performance evaluation or not? So how do you explain for the IRB that this will not be happened?
okay. Um, Suppose that we have I'm the teacher and they are my students. Um, I could explain to the IRB that grading them, grading the students follows criteria. You know, there are, you know, in teaching you have this, what do you call this? It's the other word for criteria, but I mean, it's the rubrics. Yes, the word is
Mm.
rubrics. In grading the students, especially in the classroom setup, they have rubrics. You know, so you must be. So rubrics help you to be objective as much as possible. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, doing some research and doing research as a whole entails you to give your effort and time. So I can I can I can suggest that those who volunteered or those who agreed in participating as co-authors can be given some points to a specific assignment. For example, during the process of this research, there is one assignment that they cannot, what do you call this, they cannot get because of the conflict of schedule, etc., something like that. So as a um not compensation, but as a give back to them, they can have the highest score possible to that assignment. In that case, in that case, they are not given more points than others. They are still equal in the rubrics because you just replaced the, instead of them getting the written assignment, they are participating in the research as co-authors. Yeah, so you still stick with the rubrics of the grading system. And in the instance that the research participant has an dependent relationship with the researcher must exercise uh, caution to secure the consent, to ensure that the consent was given not under any influence of the relationship.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Uh,
Is this a thesis defense? Oh my god. Okay, yeah.
okay, thank you very much, Vince.
But Vince did a good work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, kopong kap, kopong
Yeah.
kap.
Okay. Clap.
So fill the Google form.
I will, John, I will also fill my, oh,
Yes. And yeah, rate
You have
zero.
to rate yourself 0.
Yeah.
Please.
But, my form went back. May I ask if my
Then
response to Ajan, people pick is already recorded. I mean, can you
yes,
check it?
you can
Okay.
and forward. Right?
So, okay. I will 0.
So we'll have a break or we'll let Vincent present. อาจารย์สมศักดิ์คะ
ครับ
Would you like to have a break or within
Yes,
one?
please. I think around 3 minutes. Yeah. And we
So
can do it.
Vincent,
Good.
after the break, it's your turn.
Give Vincent a break. So, I'm just kidding. Okay, clap.
Yeah, let's meet.
In 3 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So good afternoon. Okay. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to present the issues and recommendations, or shall I say the best practices for this kind of research. The study on exploring whether learning to read text on a tablet involves different skills from learning to read traditional print books with children under age of 10 in their school. So basically, it's a this that what involves here are children uh, below 10. So let me just give you some background on the on our subject, the children below 10. Okay. So children below 10 are preschool, or they're so-called the school age child. So most of them are really are going to school, studying. And in the Philippines, in the 2020 statistics, ages 5 to 9. Basically, I highlighted the 5 to 9 since we have this criteria. We have this another criteria of in school. So basically, 5 is a nursery student, up to 9. So we have a population of 11,233,600 children for both sexes. And basically, children, no, this referring to the 10 and below age, are vulnerable population in the research context, form of diverse individuals with unique varying needs. And with the literature that I read, no, I was able to gather common characteristics of children below 10 years old, so that we get to know about our subject, no? So basically, these children enjoys many activities and stay busy, like painting, games, etc. They also fun of physical activities like jumping ropes, riding bikes, and other stuff. Then they can use tools, referring to the literal meaning of tools, like the scissors, and uh, but also part of the tools are the gadgets that we can use. No? Nowadays, most child uh, child within this age can basically operate cell phones or even iPads, no, tablets. So understands I just got understands command that have three separate instructions. They were able to do it. No? Can explain object and their use. Uh, read age appropriate books. So for 5 years old, there is a book appropriate for them. For 9 years old, there's also then knows the date, reads more, and enjoy reading, understand fractions, and start the concept of space and draw and paint. Then okay, I sorry. Yeah. And other sets of characteristics, they can name months, days, enjoys collecting objects, cooperates and shares, like competitions and games, enjoy talking to others. So maybe you're asking, why do I need to enumerate this common characteristic? Because this will be helpful to the researcher on how to strategize, no? And since children of this age are vulnerable uh, uh, people, no, or especially in the research context, so we can design a more effective way and avoid those possible issues that may arise, especially on the ethical side. Okay, let me start first with the practical issues. So I just listed here. No, I think the first entry, since school is our schooling student is our target. The first entry to access this subject is by obtaining approval of the school. No, I think that would be the safest way to conduct our research. At the same time, with the benefits of, we might also get some um, extended help from the school, no? Especially if our study will also be beneficial for the school for the school in designing programs for these students with our topic that we are studying, no, the skill sets for these two learning methodologies. Also, the school location will affect whether you will conduct it to in the urban setting or rural. Like what Vin said, in our rural setting, no, in the provinces, we have local dialects. So that will also affect the this will affect the study. And in the urban, basically you can just use you can use plainly English, no. But another consideration is even the type of school that we will conduct our study, because in the Philippine context there is a big difference in terms of operation and setup with the public and private schools. I can say that private schools are more stricter, more protective, no, to be exact, with their students, no. Unlike the public, they are more considerate and lenient in terms of accommodating um this kind of studies, especially and sometimes subjective, depending on how strict the administrator of the public school, or if they will accommodate you or they have other priorities. But basically, the access, no, to schools, the type of school will determine your access. And for the research team, this will also entail the availability of the research team resources, wherein if you will already define the school location, of course, if you decided to work on this on students on rural areas, on provinces, or even in the mountains, no, the schools located in the mountains, so definitely you'll be needing additional funds and resources, the place to stay, your transportation fare, the food and everything. No, so if you're not able to get a funding, no, through your organization or a or a research grant, no, it would really cost for if you will be shelling out your personal, if you will be funding it personally. And part of the resources, no, aside from the 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 the, the transportation, of course the materials that you will be needing, the materials, equipment and supplies, definitely for record the recording of your activities, no, or perhaps if you're be doing a survey, you'll be needing equipment like video cam perhaps, or or recorder at the least, no? But the strategy or the type of activities that you will conduct, that will dictate the equipments and materials that you'll be needing, as well as the people that you need to involve in your research. If you'll be needing research assistants, or you will be just doing it alone, and if you're lucky, if you have a good rapport with the school, you can use the resources to conduct your data gathering activities. And another one is the availability of resources on the part of the student at home and in school. As mentioned a while ago, at home, I refer to the economic status of the student. Of course, if the student lives in a depressed area, or in the in the lower income, no, so he might not have a extra funds to buy equipment, or very limited knowledge, no, or ability. But for private school, um, students, for students in the higher, middle, and higher economic status, they can provide whatever they need, such as the gadgets that we have right now. And similarly to in school, the availability of resources for public schools that heavily depend on public funds, whatever will be allocated or donations. So that will provide them the resources. Like for example, during this COVID, when um, when schools, public schools, no, when schools turned to online, many private organizations or even officials, they donated tablets for the use of students in public schools. But for private schools, no, they the it is assumed that it is being care of uh, the uh, the student, no, since they can afford to buy, or it is included, it is part of the tuition fee. Because sometimes, like here in our setting, we have schools here, they offer, they partner with Apple and have lower discounts for gadgets. And the type and format of resources, meaning the 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 materials that we will use to measure the materials we will use for this study. For example, if we are using just a plain questionnaire with questions, or since these are kids, we need to do some graphics and visual aids to assess their skills. And the existing teaching and learning methodology in school, that is also a consideration, because especially right now we're using a mix. Since here in the Philippines there are some schools in the grade school that allows face-to-face classes in the provinces, but it is a mixed method. So there are classes that are still online, there are classes that they come physically. And the design, as mentioned, related to the type and form, the design and conducting data collection activities. Actually, in one study, this statement, no, I got this. They mentioned that it is better that data collection activities are done in school. So later on, I'll just expound on this. And of course, since we're dealing um, with children, no, not just adolescents but children, which needs consent of parents, and of course the assent, no, at the part of the students, no, the participation of the preschool and school age children. And I just added the participation of teachers because if if the participation of teachers as facilitators might also be a good um, strategy to explore, especially when you're working on limited people resource. Plus, teachers are more experienced in terms of providing on handling this age group of students. Okay. On the ethics side, ethical issue, I think the first issue here is the parental permission, the parental consent, which will be obtained through the school, through the school. And the another one is the data privacy. Here in the Philippines, yeah, the Republic Act 10173, or the Data Privacy Act. But data privacy in terms of the profile of students and the assessment of students. It's like a psychological assessment. We need also to keep, no, keep private or confidential the assessment of each children. And of course, here in the Philippines, children are also protected. Their rights are also protected, and there are here are the list of governing laws and orders, no, which protects the rights of children against abuse and exploitation, even discrimination. So first, we have this Philippine Constitution in Article 15, Section 3, Number 2, which provides a special protection to children in all forms of neglect, abuse, cruelty, exploitation, and other prejudicial uh, and other conditions prejudicial to development. And we also have the uh, anti-violence, the special protection of children against abuse, exploitation, discrimination, which is a Republic Act 7610. While the Anti-Violence for Women and Their Children Act of 2004, this basically more refer more on the caused by the physical harm, no, to the woman or on her child, or threatening cause to a woman or her child. It's more of the physical harm, which might be uh, might be considered or might be considerable in some cases unconsciously, no? Because I noticed many of the crimes here in the Philippines on children, whether it's simple or not, it's always, you can always use this Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act. And we have also the Child and Youth Welfare Code, which indicates the 12 rights of children. And I just got three which are related, I think related for the study. The third one, the right to have proper care and importance from other people, which should be done by the researchers, and the right to be educated, and lastly, the right to be protected from abuse of adults. Remember that the one that will conduct the research are considered adults, or the one who will be facilitating all the activities are adults. And we also have the family and civil codes. So these are the laws, enactments that which protects children rights and should be considered. Okay. Another ethical issue is that, no, in one study, it was mentioned here that children tend to believe that if a researcher behave unethically or cause harm, the researcher would suffer the consequences professionally and personally. That's why it's important that it's critical and important for researchers on how he will design all his data collection activities. Especially, I think I was not able to mention here in passing even the issue on harassment might be somehow be governed if a children might feel offended or harassed by one of by an instance, no? So that can be also cited against the researcher. That's why it's very delicate to handle this kind of research, especially when children are involved. And it was also mentioned in which I will later explain more of this, that about the incentives, which we all know is a good. It's a good also. It provides also a positive outcome. Although this may also cause concerns, possible influence expressed by the participants. But with the recommendation, or the shall I say the best practice, because I got it from a research, uh, they were able to identify some of the good things that we can use as incentives, especially for this age of children, for this group age. And lastly, since we're dealing with children and we all know that children are really heavily rely on the trust, uh, wherein if you were able to build relationship with these children, no, they will be able. I think you will be able to get a more significant response or a more truthful response, and be able to conduct your activities smoothly and get their participation all throughout the research study. But this is the most challenging because you cannot get this trust in by just one session, or maybe it will take some interpersonal skill, no, or for the facilitator or the researcher to be able to build rapport uh, with the children, no, as their subjects. Actually, this trust um, is I got this from a study which they both study at children and adolescents, no, participation in research, and may affect the assessment and response to the data gathering activities. And what are the challenges of the researchers upon conducting this kind of research? First, the first consideration is the different learning adaptation of children. We all know that children, like what I mentioned earlier, you know, they have specific and varying needs, and they have different learning abilities and ways on how to adapt, and cultural factors, including race, is also a consideration, is a challenge. That's why it's important if you will select, for example, children, you identify if you will have certain group, because you cannot um, how, so that you could have a more meaningful um, analysis and comparison, no, or looking at what are the things that needs to be improved, for example in the rural areas, getting experience from the urban areas. And one of this, another example for cultural factors here in the Philippines, we have also the tribes that wherein they have also schoolings in the mountains, so they have a different culture and setup. And significant children, in one research, children under are around at age who had difficulties in understanding research concepts. That's why, since the the learning ability is for this people is limited because of their age, no, so that's why you need to translate your research, no, your data gathering materials to a more understandable way, or probably with the characteristics that I mentioned a while ago about students, you can probably design some sort of a games that will enable you to assess the skills from books to from use reading books and using a tablet. And in assessing the quality results, research participants interpreted and used risk information subjectively based on their personal experience. I think this will be related also um, depending on the, the the environment of the students that you are that will respond to the questionnaire. So basically a child who come from a public school might answer it interpret it differently, the the data gathering materials, more than the one in the private school. Like for example, if you would ask uh, um, students in the public school in a very in a very far province, which have limited access um, to to electricity and to technology, they might not recognize a tablet, or may not even see how a tablet looks like. no, compared to students in the city. And of course, um, if not handled properly, this may also lead or not facilitate if you're the especially on the data gathering, no, it may lead also to some feeling of anxiety or upset at the end of the the participants or the students. And researchers must also establish a mutual respect with the child. This if they're related to the trust, the ethical issue on trust that needs to be established in order to get a very to get a significant output, no, or response from and not also with the child, but also to the other participants like the school administrators, the teachers, and even the parents, because the parents will are the ones who will allow the students basically to participate on the research activities. And here are the recommendations, no, for, or shall I say, some of these are best practices for this kind of research that can be adopted by the researcher. First is you need to define the population to be studied, the age range, what particular group of children, the nursery, or the type of school, the environment, the school environment, so that we will not be able, so that we'll be able to um, come up with a more consistent analysis and results out of the data that we'll be getting. And from there, we can compare. And this, in terms of data collection or our research activities, no, not only data collection, but research activity, it should be designed more in a more interactive and engaging way, since students of this age are very active and they love, as mentioned in their characteristic, they love doing games and other physical activities. So we can make use of that. Then, and yeah, as mentioned, data collection activity or in general research activities done in school is effective, and I think that will make the students and the parents more uh, confident wherein their children will be safe rather than doing it outside or in other premises. 'Cause, we all know that if we have if we will do it on other locations, we will be responsible for the welfare of the students. So whatever accident might happen, we are responsible for them. Okay. And another one, since in this time of pandemic, actually there are two options that can be done. No? In this time of pandemic, if the researcher would want to pursue it, he can make use of the online environment. But I think for the online environment, this will only be limited to areas wherein there are resources for this kind of um, activities, no? And in one research, they have studied that children interact online with a wide range of different contexts, including play and like the online learning. But one of the downside of, as we also studied, that we cannot determine nonverbal cues. We cannot fully observe the nonverbal cues, or yeah, yon, because we are only limited on what we can see in the online. And yan, found that race relationship to researchers to impacted children's trust of researchers. This means that, for example, if you're in a certain province living in that, no, with that town, they are more accepting, no? Because they will see you as an insider. Unlike if you're from Manila, then you will go suddenly to a province and then you will say, oh, I will collect data or will do this activity. So there might be some hesitation or apprehension even in giving consent by the parents or even the school itself, no, for you to allow to do this research activity. And to effect if we would want to effectively uh, to effectively engage, no, our students, we could also do some parent or guardian consultation and engagement. But we need to put also in consideration that this or limit, no, because during the execution they might also be of influence on the responses of the student. But with consultation or engagement, we can get actually information or ideas on how we will be able to design our instrument. And if we were using questionnaires, it was suggested that it would be good to be short and easy. Actually, this was a study on students, children's measuring children's learning ability, because their respondents are children. So we keep our questionnaires or materials short and easy to understand. And it is good if we have a team or enough resources even to have we can have research assistants. But it is important that these research assistants are properly trained to execute uh, the research activities, especially when activities are uh, with with the children or the students. I think the best here is to first put establish a somehow a house rules, inside, just to be aware of the do's and don'ts, no, in dealing with children, special for this research activity. And I also got here that for the session, it is advised, no, to have at least 4 to 10 children so that you could um, um, you could guide them personally. It's like a big class so that they can easily so that you can guide them on a personally. And in in the research, after doing some survey, we can also the researcher can also conduct to expound or validate some information, a short interview, or yan. But it was mentioned here that it was suggested that if this were done, it should be more formative rather than summative. When we say formative, it is more of um, to monitor student learning and provide ongoing feedback. So that's it. And for the use of incentives, for researchers done with students, with children participants, they most of the tokens that they give, are they give gift certificate, toys, books, or movie passes, which is within the interest of children. Yan. So that's all for. Thank you.
Wow. Any questions from Pupik and Vince?
Okay. Um, Vincent, so you say that it's difficult for students or for children in your case, children below 10 years old, right? You say that it's difficult for them to understand the research concept. So apart from the translations, kind of like that as you present in your presentation. So my question is, do they really have to understand the research concept? I mean, in your case, you will interact with children below 10, right? And so you kind of like you and do they really need to understand the research concept? I mean, do you think in your case, do you have to explain them about the research process or kind like that, or you will go to them and then acquire the information?
Okay. With the student as your participants on the survey, you don't really need to explain the whole concept that you will be doing it, because of course um, the, um, they would not understand it that in the same context that you do understand it, or they might get confused, no? But what I'm trying to say is that when since we have the awareness that they will, so we need to do some or shall I say design our activities wherein they can easily they can easily understand that we can get information from those responses, because we need to get, like for example in this study that we're trying to explore, no, the different skills from learning from a tablet to a traditional to from reading a traditional book, no, a printed book. So we just need to get what are the skills, the student skills, no, needed for involves on these two learning process. So they don't really need to understand. We don't really need to explain it, but with these are methodology. This is how we will analyze. No, not in that sense. But basically, on the part of the researcher, we should have that awareness that we should, in dealing with our participant, it's a different world. No, we need to design it the way the world of a 10-year-old, below 10-year-old children.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, Vincent, I I think I really appreciate your oral presentation because it covers, I think, every important point that I look forward to see from this assignment. I will say, yeah, especially in the part of characteristics of children, I mean preschool and primary school student, it's very good work to have a a very concise research about this group. But I want to share my opinion with you about uh, the real example, the real thing when you try to get or collect the data from the preschool and primary school students. I think it's not just about the interviews, right? In real life, and maybe you have to beg for mercy from teachers and
Yes.
parents as well, right? Because yeah, they have to observe. I will say that
Yeah.
observe the children's reading behaviors, right, in details. And yeah, and in real life, you have to coordinate rather than a full-time researcher, right?
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
coordinate with it. But if you are a teacher, it will be better, right? I mean, in terms of as you can hear this term like a classroom research or action research, right? But you can use qualitative data collection as well, whatever. But I think it's very interesting to do that thing in real life, right? And yeah, but what I it's very catchy to hear that you mentioned about the school location, right? Because we try to study reading behaviors between, I mean, ebooks and hard copies books, right? Sometimes yeah, it depends on how rich or how poor you are can afford ebooks. Like yeah, you need ebook devices, you need electricity, or yeah, maybe it could be, you know, their parents should be afford about, you know, especially in the group of ebook readers, I think. And and the point that you didn't mention, I think sometimes their parents, they worry about their study performance, you know, or maybe you have to guarantee that your study didn't affect their grades, right? Classroom grades. Yeah, I will say that that's why, I mean, in real life, you have to become a coordinator as well, because you have to convince their parents about, you know, the effect of your study. And anyway, you have to assign some reading assignment, right, to the teacher as a homework or anything else. And when, but yeah, for I mean, in the classroom, it's very hard, I will say that. And I love the issue that you mentioned about the contents of the book as well, especially, I mean, like Vince mentioned about language barriers and the contents that's suitable for children, right? A small kid. I think it's very important that that's why at the moment in the library side, we're talking about graphic novels, we're talking about visual narrative, something like that. Just talking about, yeah. And you mentioned the words drawing, right? Maybe yeah, I if you can do this, I think I look forward to you. Maybe you can ask the question and the kids reply you as a drawing, right? A drawing process. Yeah, that is very important. Is very interesting for me as well. But overall, you cover everything that we yeah that we need or request from you. Yeah, very well done. Thank you.
Okay, Vince, well, you have question for Vincent or not?
I have one.
No, you have.
I have
No,
one.
Okay, so you
Um,
first.
Okay. Since the study is since your topic will be hypothetically will be about the reading something in the tablet, right?
Yes, yes.
What measure can you do? I mean, this will be a practical issue in case because um in that study you're going to assess reading in tablet. So how will you choose I mean, how will you choose your research participant in terms of reading comprehension itself, you know, maybe in um what you call this, in hard copies or ebook. I mean the assessment of reading itself, because you know when your respondent cannot read in hard copy
Copy.
or tangible book,
Mm.
it is most probably that they cannot also read in tablets like that, something like that, right? And especially there have been um studies that, you know, sad to say, Philippines is sometimes lowest in reading comprehension.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I often encounter that study or that update that we're still on the rank that many
yeah.
students
So
are.
how will you choose your research participant be, yeah, based on their reading comprehension.
Okay. For the, I think you're referring to the criteria of the participants. No, I think that
Yeah,
that needs to be set. No, in order to have for example, if since there is a range. No, like for example, 5 to 9. So it is possible that you will start with uh, because you cannot mix up the nursery to grade 1, because grade 1 we can say that have the more advanced reading skills rather than a nursery. But yeah, the first thing is you need to establish the criteria. For example, you will be dealing with grade uh, uh, 4 or 3 students, so that you will have an equal footing at at the start of your study, and results will not mix up, and later on the results will not be have this too big discrepancy, and you're able to make comparison or identify exactly what are the skills of what are the reading skills of a grade 3 student should be at this point. So if there are students that are that ranks below or with missing skills, so that is something that needs to be improved on, uh, to be improved. No? So I think that is the first thing, that is for the researcher should set first, the criteria of the participants, since we have a range. And apart from it, um, I mentioned also uh, the the environment, the location we're in. You need to identify where you be concentrated on urban areas, so that uh, uh, because we can say that urban areas that somehow, or if we can safely assume, all of them were able to read in a paper, in paper. That's why we can move that they can pass it. We can assess if they can read using a tablet. Unlike for uh, rural areas, no, especially in the far parts. So we don't have the assurance if they have the resources, even for papers, because we all know some of our rural areas, they just depend on blackboards, then they just go home without anything.
mm,
So that's it. So
uh,
I think it's important to really set the criteria for the
area.
participants. And
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Vince. Yeah, I have the same question as Vince. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, because this research involve using the technology, right? The tablet. So scanning the environment of, the school setting first, that is very good. And I think probably, the researcher should set some like task to, no, I'm not sure about the research design of this project. If they try to do like a experiment, something, you need to design the task first, and you will explain the task to the students, right? And I loved the way that Vincent to look at that case. Try to examine the characteristic of student or the research population or subjects first, and also the environment, the resource. These kind of things affect the research. Okay. And also I love the way that you study other previous research that having the same group of research population, so you can know more how they deal with that situation. In terms of the practical issue and also the ethical issues, that is great. And you cite that resource in your presentation. I think Vince also did it as well. Okay. and and also you mentioned about obtaining consent of parents, and also the asking the permission from the school administrators, right? So that's great. But I have some question like I think the documents submitted to the committee should state how often will you visit the school, how often you will collect data from the student, and also does this research affect their study time or not? I mean, you visit the school, right? And you visit on the daytime, but they study. I mean, they have time schedule. How do you? I think you should you should prepare some statement talking of. Explaining about this, that your research will not affect their study. Their study times. Yes. So yeah, I think that's all, I think. And also, if they want to withdraw from your research, how do you do?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll answer first the last one. No? If since in every research, since we treat participants as somehow volunteers, no? So that's why we get consent, we get the assent, the permission, not only of, in this case, not only of the parents but also the children, no? If they if the parents or the children would not want or to participate or withdraw, of course we will uh, allow them to withdraw. No, we cannot force them to something that we cannot force them to participate. But with the data that they have already provided, definitely it is our responsibility as part of data privacy to keep to ensure that this will be kept in private or safe keep, not safe keep, especially not only in that case, but especially the raw data, I think. The raw data. And when, as I mentioned a while ago, especially the data on, not only on the personal data, but also the assessment data on the skills for each student. So that needs to be taken care of. But yeah, to answer your question, Acharan, if the participant wants to withdraw, so we will not force them, and we will allow them to withdraw, and we'll find another participant which
A
is
new one.
willing, who is willing to participate and will be allowed also by their parents. And maybe in that case we could ask assistance from teachers. And with the second question, I'm answering the question backwards from the last. With the second question, because since we are doing this daytime and will be we'll be doing this daytime, and will be probably need to interrupt some classes to conduct this one. I think the good strategy for that is to tie up with, perhaps with language department or the language subject, because this will be very useful for them. The result, even the instrument that we will be using, can be also used by the faculty, the teachers, no, to assess their students. So maybe that's a good way also to tie up with the uh,
Yes.
the language teachers,
Wow.
who normally teaches the reading, the writing, the comprehension. So that's not to interrupt the regular flow of classes. Uh,
Idea.
eh, yes,
Good
Ajay?
idea.
Yeah. And how often we'll be doing this? Honestly, it will be basically depend on the design of your research, or perhaps the number of your participants that you need. Because if you're doing a qualitative, so you'll be counting out of the population of the school or the population of the city. So depending normally in a school, so the population of the school, so the acceptable. So if you'll be engaging more participants and you'll be doing series of activities, of course you'll be going to the school more often. Plus, considering also the the allotted time for the research. If you're only given, let's say, 4 months or 2 months, you just utilize that period for you maximize that period. And that's why I would like to highlight one of my, it's important also that you have this good relationship with administrators and the teachers, so that you could always go back, no, if you have some, you need of something, or you can even ask them to help you extend, they can even extend help to you for your research.
And I think that in the project, the research project documents, you need to state the period of data collection and how
Yes,
often you are going to
to the school.
access or enter
Yes,
the school, because some school need some like ID card or
yes,
some
yes.
access card to enter the school, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Ajay. That's right, Ajay.
Uh,
You will be given a
uh,
temporary pass. The,
yes.
some others could give temporary pass, so that you're only allowed for 1 month or 2 weeks for that, and they will get it.
Yes. And
Actually,
also,
yes, Ajay.
about the methods to collect the data. Do you film them or do you take photos them during the experiment, during the
Ah,
observation? Do you consider this?
okay. If I would be taking photos and will be using it as documentation, wherein if I will be asked, of course, I need to indicate it to the consent form that I will be using, I will be taking photos, no, some photos will be published, so that the parents will also, and the school will also be aware of what extent of the data will be not revealed, but will be provided, no. Of course, with the names of the student, that will be, we will use pseudonyms for that. But when we take photos, of course, no, and if you don't have consent, so, but another way, if you were not able to secure that, you can use technology, like by blurring the faces, just to show off that there is an existing activity, but they could not recognize the face, even the face of the teacher, if you were not able to secure that consent with your partner schools. Yeah. I
Okay.
think that that would be a good idea that. And I just like to add, actually, when Jarn Somsak mentioned a while ago regarding the mention of the location was catchy, because I first realized that, because coming from an experience, when I had this project with the Department of Education, we had this data gathering, actually a data gathering activity, wherein we are going to the different schools. In fact, the schools that we went to were schools in Iloilo, Vince, in your province. So we even reached we even I remember we even walked in a what do we call this, in a household where there are cows and goats. Then at the end, towards the end, is the school. And
Yeah.
when we reach the school have their computers. They have computers, but they don't have electricity.
Yes.
So there was even, coming from that experience, and not only that, of course, we went through other, and comparing the situation of schools in the city and
Mhm.
in the far province. So I think that would be a very critical consideration, especially when you talk on technology in your study. So you need to ensure that it is available, just to have a equal footing at the start of your research.
Yeah,
That's
that's good.
it.
You may have to survey the school first.
Yeah, yeah. Because that time our study was to survey the different information systems and hardware being adopted by the school. So and we one of our findings there was we there are a lot of schools where computers are deployed without realizing that those schools have no electricity. There are even schools in the island, but they have computers, but they don't use it for a year because they don't have electricity. But the computers are deployed to them. And there are also computers deployed in the mountains where teachers would come down once a month, but there is no internet connection. And there is maybe I think that the teacher would they have partly electricity, but it is only that for an hour, 1 hour a day, something like that. So that's what I remember when I thought I think of the school location, whether it's rural or urban, especially on the rural areas.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
So this cat is suit to you, right? You have the previous experience. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So please fill the form again and submit the form.